Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Adoption Happy Hour brought to you by NAAP. We are the National Association of We are the National Association of Adoptees and Parents, where it is our mission to unify the adoption community and elevate our diverse voices by promoting dialogue, understanding, and healing through education, awareness, and connections. I'm Marcie Keithley, Board President, and your host for this evening, along with Beth Story, who serves on our executive board, and Jennifer Falsing will be popping in, I believe, throughout. She's doing some things. She's working on the summit. Please forgive me. I am ill tonight, but it's just a bad cold, and I'm going to power up and power through. So, but I may stumble here a little bit, so bear with me, please. We are honored that so many of you joined us tonight, and if you did register this evening, we have a recording that is available. You do need to follow us on our Adoption Happy Hour Facebook group, and that's where the replay will go. So if you're joining us for the first time, we like to know that. If you haven't, please feel free to say hello in the chat room, how you identify, say hello to Raynard, and let him know what state or country you're from. So, but before we get started, we're going to go over a couple of housekeeping items, and Bethel, I'm ready for you when you are. We just do like to remind everyone this is a public meeting with no guarantee that information or identity is confidential. Portions of this event are recorded and may be shared in our private Happy Hour group on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. At this time, again, a reminder to please remain on mute. Raise your virtual hand if you have a question or comment. You're welcome and free to use the chat room. If you are experiencing a serious mental health event or suicidal thought, please contact a licensed professional or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by dialing 988.
Our programming, I'm going to show you some slides of the different programs that we offer. And Amber's program, First Families, Birth Parents Journeying Together, is scheduled for February 9th. And I think you can already register for that. So be on the lookout for that program.
She's the second Thursday of each month.
Dr. Joyce leads our Putting Yourself Together After Reunion group. And we've had the January one already, and we don't have a date quite yet for February, but keep tuned to our Facebook pages and our emails that go out, and you will see the date for that next one coming up. And then our last program, Danielle Gaudet leads Self-Love Essentials for the Adoption Constellation, and her program was last night. It is the fourth Thursday of each month, so that will be coming up again in February. And we do have an opportunity that came our way, an email seeking people who would be interested in participating in a survey type thing. So I'm popping this up here now. If you would like more information about it, you can contact any of us and we can share more. They are looking for people who were adopted with a racial identity different than their adoptive parents. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know and we can give you further direction. Okay, and now, of course, we are going to talk about the summit. Let me get it.
Countdown, here we go.
The screen large here. Okay, yes. The absolute countdown, 62 days from today, the summit begins. And so we are furiously working on it. Jennifer's working on stuff tonight, Marcie noted. Early bird price is still in effect through February 14th, $279. On the 15th, it will go up to $319. So you're going to want to get your ticket before then. We have the option that you can give a gift certificate to someone. And I'm going to be dropping all of these links in the chat throughout our time tonight. And of course, we can always direct you to them otherwise. But maybe someone you know can't go on their own, but you want to gift that to them, and that would be a great thing. This is the Marriott East where it's going to be held. And right from the summit website, you can make your room reservation. Now, I will tell you that there are a few rooms left right now, and as long as they will let us add rooms, we will continue doing that. We've added rooms multiple times to our block. If by chance it gets completely full, we do want you to know within 3 to 4 minutes, there are other hotels. So you could be very close, and that we wouldn't want you to not come because of that. But we are adding them all the time. And we also have a Facebook group for folks who might be looking for a roommate. And if you just go to Facebook and search Seeking Roommates for Roots, it comes right up. It's a private group, and it just helps people connect. So you could find someone who might want to share a room, and we know that's really helpful to people. So like Marcie said, countdown for the summit. Okay, I think I'm finished.
Thank you very much, Beth. I appreciate that. Yeah, we're really excited about the summit. We can't say enough, and you're going to hear about it every Friday night up until the day. But we've sold a lot of tickets, and we're getting a lot of questions, and we just got 50 plus speakers coming, and keynotes and panels and podcasters and authors, and it's just going to be a phenomenal time to unite for the first time ever these 3 communities in one place. So we're real excited about this and hope you'll be able to join us. So at this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our spotlight guest for this evening, Raynard Vincent Price. It's so good to see you again. It's been a while. How are you?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good. It's good to see you here. And, you know, my special guest and I have to tell you how we met. So, and there's some of you that attended our mini meetup that we had in Northern Indiana in September. And Raynard is a personal friend of Dr. Joyce's, and she had reached out to me to tell me about him prior to the mini meetup, and you attended. So you got to meet the board of directors and many others from the surrounding tri-state area that came to visit with us. So that was your first time meeting NAAP. And
It's my first time, and I can't tell you how excited I was about that meeting. I didn't know what to expect. Joyce said, you need to go to this. So I drove from Houston, Texas to Indianapolis, right?
yes, you did.
She said, go, so I went. And when I got there, first of all, I was in a beautiful location. So it was purposeful, but it was also an opportunity to just relax in the park because it was in a lake setting.
Yes. And, you know, that was really special about that place. And Beth, I can't even remember. You know more of the details than I did. This is up in Beth and Jennifer's neck of the woods in northern Indiana. It's called
Pokagon State Park.
I can never remember that. Pokagon.
Yeah, Angola.
In fact, when I drove up to the park, and you know how you have to go down that long road and do the, I guess there's a guard there. And I'm thinking, is this where this conference is? Because it was an unusual location. We're all used to going to hotels for conferences.
Right.
Or convention centers, never a park. And so I was thinking, maybe this is a joke. So
and that was the whole point of it. We wanted to do something for the community, but we wanted it separate from the feel of our normal conferences in Indianapolis. And Beth and Jennifer came up with this idea that was brilliant. And you would never have guessed how, again, the atmosphere was beautiful. It's right on the lake. You know, we had great rooms. It was just perfect. But, you know, you could ride your bike, you could horseback ride, you could go boating or kayaking or whatever. But it was just, we wanted a different feel, and we wanted to try and do these and take them along, you know, in different parts of the state. So this was our first one. We wanted to do it in our own backyard. So look to see those in the future. We want to try and do, we thought we could try and do one once a quarter. That might be a little ambitious goal. But we plan to do that again, don't we, Beth? We got a lot of really good comments. It was just a beautiful weekend. So yeah, but that's where we met. And that's how it all started with Dr. Joyce. So share with the audience a little bit about you and how you came to the adoption community.
Well, you know what? I will start off with the story. And the story, I think, is is something people ask all the time. So how did I become a foster parent / adoptive parent? There was a process as a single man. And so the year was 1994, but I want to say 1993, I started that process out. I woke up one Sunday morning with my fake cousin. He had the same last name as I did, so we pretended we were cousins. And there we were, and this is a true story, just give you the visual. There we were after a long night of partying at the club in Los Angeles, which is where I live, that we decided we were just having coffee, sitting on the couch. And I was reading a newspaper article about the need for foster parents and the need, especially for Black men, to be foster parents. And I thought that was interesting. And at that point in time, I really felt the need to be a parent. My mom had just visited me in Los Angeles, and she liked my little high-rise apartment that I lived in with the ocean view. But you know what she said? She said, "You're just throwing money in the wind. And look at you." She said it like this: "Look at you. You don't have a pot to piss in." It would take maybe 5 years to realize what that meant, because I didn't know what it meant at the time. I didn't know the story behind that phrase. But she basically said I was throwing money at the wind and I had nothing to show for it. So I had decided I would buy a house. But that was not on the top of the list. On top of the list was, how do I become a foster parent? I called the number that was in the newspaper article in the LA Times, and it was called the Black Parenting Institute. And I called them up and said, I wanted to be a foster parent. Well, they took my name and address. They didn't seem to really care. And they sent me a package that was this thick. I don't know if you can see that measurements, but it was a thick package, like the kind of package you would buying a house. Lots of background information. It was intimidating. I threw the package on the dining room table and said, I can't do this. Fast forward, it's August. It's about the time for my annual Hawaii trip to Kona with friends. Think not the Friends TV show, but the In Living Color TV show. And so we meet like 4 or 5 times a year. And this was our Kona meeting. I go to Kona in Hawaii with my friends, and we're sitting on the lanai, the back of the house facing the ocean. And we jokingly called it lanai talk. And at lanai talk, you can talk about anything. We only come together a certain amount of times a year. And I mentioned I wanted to be a father. And they said, what, you? You want to adopt kids, you? Mr. Party Animal? Why don't you get a fish or a dog first before you adopt a kid? At least with a dog or a fish, we can see if this is something you can do. They joked about it, but I was serious. Fast forward to Thanksgiving. We are now meeting in Thanksgiving. And in Thanksgiving, we meet at a place called Seacoast Ranch, which is at the border of California and Oregon. And people have brought their wives and kids are running around. And one of my female friends said, is this what you want? Are you sure? Is this what you want? And I said, yes, I think I do. So fast forward, we leave Seacoast Ranch, and it's February, and it's time for us to have our annual February Monterey trip. So I'm in Monterey, we're walking along the beach, and we're talking about me becoming a foster parent. I didn't know the world of adoption yet, just fostering. And that's what I really wanted to do. So then at this point, we are now at the all guys, all male trip at Lake Shasta in California. We rent a houseboat. We're going around the lake and we're just having a great time, the whole thing, drinking beer, skinny dipping. And we're talking about me becoming a dad. And I'm thinking, a houseboat with some kids, that would be so much fun. Okay. That was my vision. I never got to take any of my kids on a houseboat. It always got too busy. But fast forward now to August again, and we're back in Hawaii. We're on lanai talking Kona, drinking our Kona coffee. And I said, I'm going to do this. I go back to Los Angeles, and one of the guys that was at the lanai talk in Kona was at a conference in Los Angeles, and he came over to, he met me at the La Brea Tar Pits before his flight. And he wanted to know, he said, look, you got to buy a house, dude. If you're going to raise kids, you need a house. And I said, look, I can't afford a house. I got bad credit. And he said, well, how much is your bad credit? And I said, like $5,000. And he started laughing. And he said, $5,000? Is that what's holding you up? And he mentioned the fact that he owned apartment buildings in San Francisco, which he did, and that he was deep in credit or liability. But he said that should not be, that should not hold you up. You know, you need to look for a house. So I go back to work. 2 days later, I get a night package. And in that overnight package is $5,000, a check for $5,000 with a note that says, whoop, there it is. How cool was that? So I cleaned up my credit. It was incredible to the things I learned by doing that. And I got a real estate agent and I bought a house. And then I decided, okay, now it's time to take the foster parenting classes, but I'm not filling out that form, that package. But next door to me, there's my neighbor. My apartment building was meant for that floor to be a top floor, exclusively back in the 1950s, to be a very large kind of apartment. So the wall was paper thin because it was just built to divide the apartment up. And next door to me was a gentleman by the name of Carl Bean. He was Reverend, or I should call him, but he was a Reverend, Carl Bean, Bishop Carl Bean. He had a church called Unity Church, and he was also the founder and director of the Minority AIDS Project. And I got to tell you, every morning when I was on my way to work, he was on his way home from spending the night in the hospital with a dying patient. And I would just hug him in the hallway. He would cry and he would say, we lost another one. And that was his life for a long time. But he said, I need to talk to you. I heard you trying to become a foster parent. I said, yeah, but the package they want me to fill out, it's intimidating. I can't do it. And so he told me about an organization called GLASS. GLASS stands for Gay and Lesbian and Adolescent Social Services. Never heard of them. But I went there after they invited me to come and hear about being a foster parent. And let me tell you, I went there and it was like a wine and cheese party. It wasn't like the big package that the other group just sent. It was a wine and cheese party. They talked about kids. They talked about fostering, their mission. And they actually assigned someone to help you fill out that big package. So you did it a little bit at a time every weekend because you went to these group sessions. And in these group sessions, they wanted you to know about the mental health issues of some of the foster kids. They wanted you to know about the legal system and some of the other issues that you may have to deal with. And that was just simply amazing. So they were a family foster agency. And so I became one of their foster parents, and they put 6 kids in my house right away. And my house was brand new. I actually really didn't live in it that long because I was always commuting, going back to work from where I lived in Palmdale, California to Los Angeles. That was my first set of 6 kids. I adopted 5 of those kids. And the oldest one is now 43. And he's always asking, how come you didn't adopt me? Well, at the time, he needed a lot of services. And by adopting him, I would have adopted him out of those services, something that you always have to be careful about in the world of foster care. So that is how I became a foster parent. That agency would go under, and most of my kids would be transferred to the county before I adopted them. And then as some of those kids moved on, before they even moved on, other foster kids came to my house where I had a total of 8 kids. And that was beyond the limit you could have. But because I had hired help and I had a big house, it worked. And so the kids I fostered and the kids I adopted, in a nutshell, I adopted 12 kids and I fostered 35, all as a single man. It was a huge battle. At that time, the governor of California, Pete Wilson, had an all-county memo that single people could not adopt. And so my battle in court was just way too much. It was exhausting, but I persevered and I won. So over his, suggestions that single people could not adopt. And so there we were. And my kids are multi-ethnic. They're white, they're Black, they're Asian, Latino. They're really just blended across the board. It was fun having a blended household. It was fun having multi-ethnic kids, except for when they were young and I walked around the mall with them. That didn't look pretty. So I see some laughter there. I look like the biggest pedophile with these little kids. I'm walking around the mall who are hugging me. And I got to tell you, and some of these kids, you may know some of these kids who came to me came with so much anger and I understand it. I really understand it, because you're being taken away from your family and everything you know. And now you're going to live with this strange guy. But that's not just it. They've been in group homes and all my kids were placement failures. And I was at McDonald's one day in Palmdale. And I was just so stressed out because I did not know these kids would have all these issues. I did not know they would throw milkshakes across the restaurant. And I looked up, totally stressed out. And hopefully this one guy is on here. He's now married with kids of his own, and with an adult daughter who recently got married. But I looked up and there were these 2 Mormon missionaries at the cash register. And I got to say it like this. The sun was shining down on them. They walked over and asked me if I needed some help. And I said, I do. And they took some of the kids and sat in 2 different places in the restaurant with some ice cream cones. And I got to breathe. That was very nice. And those 2 Mormon missionaries became lifelong friends. How could they not be?
Absolutely.
They know.
Pardon me, this may be a good time for me to just kind of break for a second and kind of address something, because when you were talking about the anger, right? You were talking about the anger that you witnessed, and you were like, you didn't know what was going to happen. There was no lead up. There was no guidebook that these children could have their own manners.
You know what? I know it. There was no, especially at the time I was doing it in 1994 or whatever, there was no real training. There was no real guidance. There was not, you were out there on your own. And I'm going to say something that I've said many, many times, to the point where I know people are tired of hearing me say it. Social workers weren't social workers. They didn't really come in to offer any suggestions or how we can help you. There was, I've had a heart attack. And when I had that heart attack, there was a social worker who came into my room and she said, what do you need? How can I help you? And I went, oh, is that what a social worker is? Because that was my first time feeling somebody cared about me. And I didn't feel, in the 30 years, I probably had 3 social workers who actually did social work, who knew some of the ins and outs of what I needed to do. Everything else, I was just simply on my own. And I actually hired people to help me. One of my kids actually was autistic and he would not speak. He's 8 years old, he would not speak. And so I hired I believe it or not, I hired a guy who was deaf to assist me, because I actually worked on the day, and he could talk. He had a hearing aid, but his enunciations were not that good. But he took that one kid who was 8 years old at the time, and while he was bathing him and I was shaving, he was giving him flashcards. And to your point, Marcie, he mentioned to me that the reason why the kids were all angry is because nobody is listening to them. Nobody was listening to them. And so they were just out there in an adult world. People don't get this. When those kids are in family court, that's an adult world. That is some bull.
Something interesting with this.
Yeah.
In your bio, I mean, I was very impressed with this. The fact that staying on the issue of anger and angry children is you end up, obviously you didn't know anything, you weren't aware of that. And then you end up that you conducted these anger management classes for these kids. And I thought I had it underlined here.
Stuck in your stuff.
Stuck in your stuff.
Yeah.
So you didn't go, oh, I didn't know that. And you not only tried to figure it out, you tried to help and go up above And I think that's pretty good. The anger management workshops were called Stuck in Your Stuff. And that was done in California, the Los Angeles Department of Children and Family Services, right? So
Too,
that's
I
one of the
did
things
Stuck in Your
that
Stuff
I
for
think is
probation
important.
department, which I don't think that for children exists anymore, but for probation kids, and I did for LADCFS and for foster kids. And Stuck in Your Stuff was something that, yes, I came up on my own. Um, uh, uh, I think that, I don't know where I pulled that from. Maybe just, we all have our experiences of growing up. We all have those aha moments, as Oprah Winfrey likes to call them. But as we grow and mature, we have life lessons of our own that we can now share with our kids. I actually had some kids who come to my house, I would give them a stack of books and have them walk around the room with this stack of books. And I said, that's all the crap you're walking around with every day. And I would start taking the books off. And if you just got rid of some of that crap, your life would be so much better and so much lighter and easier to travel. Don't ask me where I got that from. It was just natural for me to do. Stuck in Your Stuff. I also gave a workshop called Funky Town. I didn't put that on there, but that's from a song that how do we get kids from Funky Town to realize that there's a bigger world out there that they know nothing about? I work with some kids here in Texas right now at an impoverished school. I go there twice a week. And when you talk to those kids, they don't have a clue that there's a world beyond where they live. One of the guys who worked with me in the mentoring, he's a businessman, and he had just mentioned how he just flew in to get to the meeting. And some of the girls went, "Oh, you must be rich." But, they had no clue that, for $59, they can get on a flight to someplace. So, and to them, flying is something rich people do. And I thought about when I was young and living in the projects, I thought that was my world. That was just my world. And I didn't know there was more to that world out there. So I think when I worked with the probation kids, we got a lesson from the probation director because these kids looked really nice. They looked very nice. But there's a reason why they were in this special school, community school for probation kids. And she reminded me that they look nice, but they can just rip your spine right out if you get them upset. But what I learned from those kids, they just wanted somebody to care. That's all. They just wanted somebody to listen to what they have to say and to care. Then I learned about graffiti. There's the gang graffiti, but there's the graffiti that's art. And that's how they see it. So in the probation school, you would think there would have been an art class. We had to come up with the art class for them. And that was a way for them to express themselves. Then we did a writing class, a poetry class. There were so many things and so many ways that they could express themselves to relieve the anger that it was just real simple. They were all going to school where they were being put into a box where everybody does the same thing. And then they want to know why kids are skipping school, why they're dropping out, why they're getting into fights in school, because school is not for them, not that way. They learn in a different kind of way. So that's what I learned. And I learned if I was going to do this, I had to be my own. I couldn't expect anything from social workers. Social workers basically came to my house just to inspect, just ask the kids, did I rape them? Did I beat them up? Did I do anything? It was insulting actually at some point. It really was. And some social workers are actually kicked out of my house. I had a social worker who came to my house to ask one of my kids, well, what are your plans for the future? And I sat there next to him, and the worker said, no, he needs to talk to me. You go do something else. And I said, no, you go do something else, because he can't talk about a plan without me being involved. I'm going to help him get there. That's my job. And they weren't used to me as that kind of social worker. Foster parent. A foster parent who cared enough that I'm going to help that kid get to where he's going to go. And you're going to love this. That kid was a great football player.
And
I
something else too, along that is that, you obviously believe in family preservation.
oh
And
yes.
a lot of your foster children went back to their bio families.
I mean,
You
what I learned was that no matter how wonderful and great you are, the ultimate goal is for kids to get back to their parents. That's really what they want. And so you can give them the world, but if you're not whole, then the world means nothing to you. So my fostering has always been about getting kids back with their parents. Did I get in trouble for that? Yes. I had a kid who was in my home, and I'm looking at this kid. He's wonderful and great. He had been expelled from school, but I got him back into school. But when I got him back in school, I had a meeting with the school, and I took his father to the meeting. And it turns out the principal and the father knew each other because he was a bad kid in school himself. And so we got what the father got while we had that school meeting. He learned how to talk to the school. He learned how not to be intimidated by the school and to advocate for his own son. So with me sitting alongside of him, he became his son's advocate. I let him do all the talking. And when then that kid got a job, you're gonna love this story. That kid got a job at a local grocery store. Then I took him home and I got into trouble. The social worker said, you can't just be taking kids back home without going through us. I said, there's no reason for that kid to be in foster care. You know it and I know it. So when I went to court, I told the judge, there is no reason for this kid to be in foster care. He and his father get along just great. And I know his sister, she's awesome. The judge ordered all the kids back home. So, that was one upset social worker. Not because the kids got to go home, because she lost control. And isn't that crazy? I found out control is really what child welfare and foster care is all about. It's about the control. And so when you take that away, they are just really upset with you. That kid, by the way, started his own business, and this is a true story. He bought a house right behind me, and that was not a cheap house. So he came to me and said, what do you think about that house right there? I said, that's a great house. He goes, I just bought it. That was so awesome to hear. So I have kids who graduated from high school. I have one kid who graduated from college. I have 5 kids who own homes. There is a success story. So with my success story, is this the guy you want to beat up? This is a guy you want to ask, tell us how you do what you do so that we can replicate what you do and make it work for all kids in foster care. I can tell you, all of my foster care and adopted kids, it was all open. So birth parents can come to my house. I was not afraid of birth parents. They make you afraid of birth parents, but I was not. Birth parents came to my house. They washed collard greens at my sink. They cooked. They made Thanksgiving meals. We all ate together. We celebrated birthdays in my house. I don't even think I could even be a good parent or foster parent without having their biological parents around. And one of the things I said to all of them, while I have your kid, you go take care of yourself, make yourself better, go back to school, do what you got to do. Your kids are safe here with me. So yes, that's a huge part of my parenting, was to have the biological families back. And somewhere on my Facebook, if you ever go to my Facebook, there are these huge Thanksgiving celebrations with all these families who came to our house to have Thanksgiving meals. Okay, we had to call it. We had to change the name of it from Thanksgiving because one of my kids was Indian. He married an Indian woman and Native Indian, and so that Christopher Columbus thing was not working for her. So, but it was great. It was great.
Wonderful, wonderful. You wanted to
that kid who I said played good football. He was in special ed, and I did not have enough space in my house for him. At some point, the county says, "Okay, well, you got to spread these kids out." So he got transferred to a group home because I lacked the space. But the judge was smart enough to continue to give me his educational rights. So I went to visit his school, and he was going to school in a trailer with 2 other kids who wore helmets. And I'm thinking, what is this all about? There was nobody there for him. There was nobody there to help guide his education or his life. And I threatened to pull him out of that school when the owner of that non-public school said, look, let me introduce you to my dad. Well, the dad happened to own Montclair Prep, one of the most prestigious schools in Los Angeles County. And the agreement was he would go to Montclair Prep and if he played football. And I said, hey, works for me. I got a phone call from a social worker who said, they're just taking advantage of him by playing football. This is me. You're an idiot. And I hung up. And this is why, I'm not a good person when it comes to social work. I'm sorry. Name me a college football player who's not playing football or drafted by that college to play football as a way of going to school. So here was a foster kid in LA County going to a prestigious school, and people are complaining that he's playing football, something that he loves to do. He graduated, by the way, with I think a 3.8 average. And his plan was at graduation. It was a little embarrassing for me. At his graduation, you got to know that these are well-to-do families at this graduation. And as they walked across the stage, they said that they were going to Harvard and to Yale because that's what the school is about, to help prepare kids into this school. So my son gets up there. I'm going to point out that he's white, by the way. It's important to the story. He gets up there and he says, I'm going to the Army. And this lady next to me said, did your son say he's going into the Army? And I said, yes. She goes, oh, well, I suppose he has to go someplace. And I thought, well, I can't tell you what I wanted to say, okay? He had a plan. His plan was to join the military, get married, and go to college, and then run for office. There's only one of those things he did not accomplish yet. He joined the military, he got married, he went to college, and what's left is for him to run for office. And hopefully he won't, but he's also one of my conservative kids who I couldn't change his political way of thinking. And as much as I tried, despite our blended family, he was always very, very, very conservative. So any questions about any of this?
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to go ahead and put your virtual hand up at any time. So today, Raynard, do you have any children in your home?
What I have in my home now is one of my adopted sons. In my home are 2 of my adopted sons. The one that did not speak, who was autistic. By the way, when I was mentioning the deaf tutor that he had, was trying to do flashcards with him when he was 8 years old. And he would say cat, brown, green. He was just trying to get him to say something. And this went on for weeks. We didn't even put him in school because we didn't even know if he was educatable, if you know what I mean. And this went on for weeks. And I'm shaving, getting ready to go to work in LA. And my guy is doing these flashcards. And all of a sudden, he said cat. And he started clapping. Then he said brown, and he started clapping. And I went, oh my God. And I called the school. He can read, he can talk, because he didn't talk at all until age. He did. I mean, that's a lot of autistic kids. They talk when they're ready, if that's what happens. And I was so excited. My very first IEP with that school was in my living room. I didn't even have furniture because it was a brand new house. And we sat on the floor, and I got great letters from that school about our achievement with him. I want you to know he graduated from high school with a regular high school diploma. So I try to move my kids from special ed to regular ed as much as possible. And I've had a lot of success in doing that. So he actually graduated with a regular degree. He lives with me now. And also living with me is one of my adopted sons and his 2 biological brothers who are college students. They were also in foster care. But if I may toot my horn, they were at the end of their foster care. Both somehow they were both seniors or 19 years old at the same time. My one might have been held back. I can't remember, but they didn't know that they were eligible for lots of money for college. So I got that for them. I called up the county and like, have you lost your mind? How come you guys haven't done anything for these kids? And so they flooded those kids with lots of money. It was great. And they told me, you better thank Mr. Price. So those two college students live with me. So there's four other guys that live with me. Yeah. I would love for them to go to work and make a lot of money. But for now, I'm supporting them.
And then tell me, how did you and Joyce connect, Dr. Joyce?
I served on lots of committees along the way and lots of focus groups along the way. And one of the things I served on was Family Fostering Today. It's changed hands a couple times, but Joyce and I were both on the board of that magazine. So we made suggestions on articles. I wrote a couple of articles. Joyce wrote a couple of articles, if not a lot of articles. But we both served on the board of that magazine. So that's how we connected. And then we were also, in the early days, we were all on a computer group way before Zoom and way before Facebook. We just found a way to connect, and we did. So we had some foster parents. We just connect and shared stories. We were our very own support group. So that was nice.
Okay. We can start taking any questions. Do we have any foster care alumni here with us tonight that might want to ask a question or add a comment? Or do we have any other foster parents here this evening?
My hand raised.
Okay, Maureen, go ahead and take yourself off mute.
There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm not a foster parent or adoptive parent. I'm a first mother. However, my parents, before I was born, took in foster children, and they took them in, I believe, 25 to 30 years or so. And we had about 3 of them where my parents did encourage too, along with a few social workers, on them getting to meet their actual biological parents, and they would come over to visit. I remember one of the first times, Spencer, I was 12 years old, and a social worker brought Spencer over at the age of 5. He's Native American, and he had, I think, 7 other biological siblings, but they all went to different places. Well, Spencer's father worked very hard with the social workers at being able to come over and visit. And us kids got excited when his father came over to visit, but we were told by my mother, no, this is Spencer's turn. So we couldn't see him at the time. But my parents worked very hard themselves with making sure that the kids were taken care of very well. And yes, what you say about the social workers, they were not helpful. There were many ways that they really, like you said, they had the control. And as I got to be, about maybe 22 or 23, that's when my mother had her first run-in, a big, huge run-in with one of the social workers, and really started fighting back. And it was a good thing for Spencer. Again, it was still Spencer. He stayed the longest with us, and my parents adopted Spencer when he was, I believe, 16. And that's when one of the social workers told my mom she told Spencer, actually without my mother's knowledge, that he would never see his biological mother again. And my mother didn't find this out until Spencer was in the front yard throwing huge, huge rocks out into the street. And my mother found out, and she called that social worker, and I swear to God, she gave her holy hell. And she said, you got to take that back. So, but that's about all. And my parents were still taking in their last foster child, I think, when I was about 34 or 35. And the social workers begged. So, and that's about it.
I hear you. I hear you. And I see another hand up, but I don't really get why it's so difficult. Things are changing a little bit. Things are changing a little bit. I know in the area where I live, they are doing a program that's similar to what I've always done. And they're using foster parents to help to be peers to birth parents. And that's a very smart move. There's a lot of talented foster parents out there. Their skills were being wasted. So now to have foster parents work with birth parents, and that's something I've always done. So it just makes good sense. If we're going to do first family right, if we're going to follow the rules of first family, this is a way to do it. This is how you heal families, by healing the parents as well. Parents need healing.
Thank you. I think that's awesome. I love the way you do that.
Thanks. I got into a lot of trouble, but know that I got into a lot of trouble. Before I forget, because I'm very forgetful, and I do see the hands, I do want to talk about one of the problems of adoption that I encountered that I did not know until years later. So the selfish part of me wanted a child. I wanted a son. So I just kept giving my kids my last name. So when I took the last name of my Spanish speaking kids or my Mexican kids, I destroyed their culture. I truly did, because the last name is a part of the culture. It's a part of where they're from and everything. And so I was smart enough to take one of my kids and change his last name Castaneda to make it his middle name, and gave him my last name Price. He has Price tattooed on him. He now likes it, but he goes by Castaneda, also Castaneda Price. So that saved his culture. I have two other kids. They actually, officially, their last name is my last name, but I'm really okay with them using their former names. I'm really okay. The other issue that I ran into is that when I adopted my kids, I didn't change their social security numbers. So down the road, they ran into problems with the IRS. They ran into problems with the military, because now they got two names with the same social security number. Okay. And the other issue that I ran into that I didn't know about, that I would talk about a lot, is that this is a big one. When my kids get married, if they're not with me, there's information they're going to need to put on that marriage certificate. So one of my kids was getting married in LA County, and I guess, I don't know why, I think the county people in the the marriage license office had a problem with his birth certificate just having my name on it. There's no name of a female, it's just me. And I don't know why they made him do this, but on his marriage certificate license, he had to have my mother's name and my father's name. And so he didn't know that information. He called, he was really upset. He's PTSD from the military because he served in Iraq. And he's like, I need this information, I need it now. And I said, relax, I'm gonna give it to you. Okay. And fortunately, I gave my mother's name and her birthday, and my father's name and his birthday for him to put on that marriage certificate. So adopted kids run into problems if we're not careful about giving them the information that they need. So, and one of my kids got audited by the IRS because his last name didn't go with, he had two names on his Social Security. And all those people who are supposed to be making all that work, in the birth certificate department of the count of the state, I think they just drop the ball sometimes. And so I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
Peter had a question.
Yeah. Peter.
Unmute, take my hand down. Hey, how you going?
Hi.
Yeah, I'm a late discovery adoptee 6 years ago. I'm a proud Kamilaroi man of the Kamilaroi Nation, Australia. I'm the president of Adoptee Rights Australia. listening to you on foster caring, look, I have absolutely no problem with the way you're doing foster caring. I applaud you. I agree with you about social workers. Yep, it's all about power control, and I've seen the same thing where kids should have gone back to their parents, and eventually they did after the foster care agencies failed, and you know, they had no choice but to put them back to the parent, which was the best thing that ever happened. I won't agree with you on adoption. I'm glad you put that little disclaimer in there that they had problems. I think as a person who lost their identity for 59 years, have a fake birth certificate, fabricated. It has no no relevance to truthful fact. Yeah, my adopted parents didn't give birth to me. I've got a court case on Tuesday with the New South Wales Birth, Deaths and Marriages. I've been trying for 5.5 years to get my father's name on my original birth certificate. Been rejected 5 times. I have the Register of Birth, Deaths and Marriages mobile phone number in my phone. Hopefully it'll go my way. Hopefully it'll be a test case or but I think I just can't see any need to adopt any child. And
I think down the road, like many social experiments dealing with children, because if we look back, the history of child welfare, you know, something that came out of something that came out of I don't know, some animal kind of thing. I'm being distracted by this phone that's ringing. It's not my house that I'm in. I'm in the home of a friend, and I don't know to turn this phone off.
Hello. Your call cannot be taken at the moment, so please leave your message after the tone.
Sorry about that. I asked my friend to get rid of all distractions. Look, we did a lot of experiments with children over the years. We put them on trains and we sent them to the South. You know, we sent them to orphanages. We turned them over to the Catholic Church and said, look, do something with them. You know, we created all these boys' homes. And now in infinite wisdom, we continue to do these experiments by rushing kids to adoptions. When kids go into foster care, you know, parents pretty much got a year or 2 years to get it together before that kid becomes a permanent plan. And that permanent plan is always adoption. But I'm gonna tell you, and mark my word, if somebody plays this video 10 years or 20 years from now, we're gonna look back and realize what a mistake we made. We created a whole population of people who are not whole. We created a whole population of people who don't know their origin or where they're from or who they are. They don't know their DNA. They don't know what their medical history. They don't know if they're, look, I have diabetes. Here's what I know. I know my mother has diabetes. Well, welcome to the club, Peter. So
I don't have diabetes yet. My mother died of diabetes and kidney failure. My 5.5 years after I met her. My brother 3.5 years after I met him. I've now got the beginnings of kidney dysfunction. So yeah.
I was gonna say, I don't know if kidney disease is genetic, but you're predisposed to diabetes because it's in your DNA, it's in your genes.
Yep.
My mother had diabetes. Her mother had diabetes. I know I got all these people who say you can reverse diabetes if you rub sage on your forehead or whatever it is. But if it's in your DNA, it's in your DNA and it's not going anywhere. But here's the thing about adopted kids. When they get sick, they don't know that they might have been, they got some issues that's in their DNA. They don't know anything about it because unfortunately, when we adopt kids, or actually when we put kids in foster care, what we've been doing, and the Child Welfare League is really responsible for this. We erase people. We erase their parents. We erase the community they were raised in. We erase all their cousins, their lineage, everything about them, because we want to give them to Bessie over here, and we want Bessie to adopt them. And here's the problem with that. It ends right there. Whoever they were before, it ends right there.
Yep.
The biological parents are probably becoming drug addicted or alcoholic, because that hurts. It hurts to lose your kids. You know, look, when I was in Indianapolis, the thing I don't know if anybody remembers me crying if you were there. I was crying because I heard the stories in that room, and the stories in that room just made me cry. Yeah, there were so many people in that room who just really didn't have a clue about their lives, and they want answers. And I get it. And here's what we're doing in foster care. We're rushing kids to adoption. And we're not giving them any, like a list of who their parents might have been or anything. We're not giving them anything. Somehow all those records that we create when we're adopting kids, like home studies, all that somehow disappears. We do it. It's just phony. It's fake. We do it, but it doesn't go anywhere. Nobody can refer back to it. They only refer back to it if you kill 5 kids. And then they can say, well, in the home study, blah, blah, blah. But they don't refer to the home study. It's too much work. And here's the problem I have. The problem I have is I'm sick and tired of hearing social workers tell me how they're overworked. If you're overworked, then stop putting so many kids in foster care, because most of them don't need to be there. That is really, don't get me riled up. That is really the bottom line. They don't need to be there. I like you riled up. Well, I'm telling you, well, not if you're LA County, you don't want me riled up. So most of them do not need to be there. Some of those kids are there for neglect because a parent had to go to work and they left their 11-year-old kid home alone. You know, back in my day, it happened all the time. Then we decided to call them latchkey kids. Seriously, there's a name for it. And now we're oversensitive about protecting kids. We can't let an 11-year-old be home by themselves. They got to be in foster care living with a stranger. But wouldn't it have been easier if we provided child care for the mother? No, because that's not how it's funded, is it? It's funded, it's funded once you put kids in foster care, then you can get services. That doesn't make any sense. Once you adjudicate you can't get services until a judge adjudicates that case. Now you can provide a lot of services to the foster parent, not to the birth parents. That's the crazy part. As a foster parent, they threw everything at me. You know, here's some mental health. Here's some Christmas presents. I mean, they just threw everything they could. But why not do that to birth parents? I mean, isn't that really what it's about? But no, it's about us controlling. And, you know, I feel really bad because I didn't want to talk badly about social workers, but I can tell you that social workers, at least in LA County, a lot of their training is by the police. The police is training them. So these social workers are not doing social work. They're going into the house and they're looking for telltale signs of drug use. They're looking for a burnt cigarette burn in the coffee table. They'll ask questions like, can I have a glass of water? Because they just, you know, instead of saying, do you have running water? They play these games. Can I have a glass of water? They're not going to drink it. They just want to know if you have running water. Can I use your bathroom? Which they're not allowed to do, but they'll just go in there and flush the toilet. There are all these games that we play when we really could be getting serious about raising kids and raising families. We can raise families. We can make families better. That's what the whole Family First was supposed to be about. And people are not, they're not instituting the Family First. They just, we're rolling it out slowly but surely. And they're not rolling it out as fast as they could roll it out, because as social workers, they were never supportive of families, so they don't know what to do. I said it and I feel better.
That's good. I agree 100%. You know,
where you're from, in the part of the world you're from, in Australia and New Zealand area, you know, decision making comes from that area of the world. What happens is,
elaborate.
It comes from your area of the world. in child welfare, they have something called decision making. They changed the name recently, but decision making is when everybody gets together, all the social workers get together on the case, and they come up with what's best for that family. And they put stuff on the wall. Here are the strengths, here are the weaknesses, and they decide what's best for that family. It doesn't work. First of all, whatever they put in that wall, nobody's going to follow through with. It just looks cute up there on that wall. And it looks cute as a report in a file that nobody reads. But in Australia and New Zealand, when the decision making comes from, was it the Aborigines tribes? They did, what they would do is when there was a problem, like Uncle Joe is an alcoholic, so the whole tribe gets together and try to figure out, how do we help Uncle Joe? How do we help this family? That was the decision making. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I'm actually an elder, local elder, and
what does that mean?
everyone gets called uncle and auntie. I'm still getting used to being called uncle, but all younger people call you uncle. And yeah, this is all new to me because 6 years ago, my father's Italian, Aboriginality on my mother's side. Over my shoulder there, that little girl there is my grandmother. Right?
Oh, nice. Behind you. Oh, nice.
Behind me, yeah.
Nice.
So my world got turned upside down. Who I was wasn't who I was, and it's been a interesting journey.
I'm glad you have those pictures behind you, because what I did, I take a lot of pictures. Anybody who knows me, I take lots and lots of pictures. I just document the whole entire journey. And so as my kids get older, they value those pictures of when they were younger. But I also collected pictures from their parents. Their parents would actually give me pictures that I would just hold on to. And one family gave me an entire book of pictures of them with their son, with the mother who passed away. And it was just lots of younger pictures that I did not have, because he came to me at age 13, I think. I gave him that book when I realized he was now settled. I gave him that book at age 40. He cried all day long. That book was his history, and he cried all day long. I
was going to say, when I met my mother for the first time, I created a book of pictures of myself, my wife, my 5 kids and their children, and separated them all so my mother could understand my family, and not my adopted family. I didn't involve them whatsoever, but so she could see her grandchildren and great grandchildren and where they fitted. I think that was important for me to do, and important for her.
It's very important for her. It was very important for her, and good for you. And that is the problem with adoptions. We are just erasing people. We're erasing their history, their lineage. I got to tell you, there's a mother, she's on my Facebook, because I allow my biological parents to be on my Facebook. Look, if the parents can see their kids, then they're not worried about if they're okay, right? So this woman, when I first got her sons, I tried to keep them in her life. And I would meet with her for lunch and breakfast, and then we would leave, because she was always, still drug addicted and still using. But she's clean now. And as much as it's taken this long, she is clean. And she put a video on my Facebook that just made me cry. She said, "Thank you, Mr. Price, for taking care of my sons when I couldn't." How awesome is that? I didn't steal them. I babysat them. But I did all the right things. So, and I have a father out of Maine who said, lots of thank yous. Thank you for taking care of my kids when I couldn't. And let me tell you what he also did when they were my foster kids. He would let me use his insurance. So he had really good insurance instead of Medicaid, or I don't know what you have in your country. But I used his insurance for everything. eyeglasses, you name it. They would send it to him, he'd send it to me, I signed it, send it back to him, and the bill got paid. They were able to get really good therapy by, $100 an hour therapists, not a therapist who's just learning how to, not a therapist who's just getting some hours off of foster kids. And this is a problem in foster care, isn't it, and child welfare. We use those kids. We use those kids for everything. If you are a mental health person, that's foster kids is how you can get hours off of. Okay. If you are a doctor or a psychiatrist, you may prescribe some medication. You don't really know that medication yet, but you'll give it to foster kids and see how it works. It is just really, it's awful. We have really been awful to kids under the pretense of caring about them. And the people who do care about them, we try to get rid of them. Yeah.
Let's, if I may interject and go ahead and ask some more questions. That's okay. I know
Sure.
Beth's had her hand up for a while, so
Oh, I'm
let's
sorry, I had this.
get in there.
That's okay. Someone sent a direct question to me, so I'm going to read it to you. Please ask if his foster children always knew who their bio parents were.
Yes, I'm trying to think of any of them that did not. They all did. Yes. And if they didn't, no, they did. They did. And either I saw them in court. Sometimes when you go to court, lawyers don't let you speak. Lawyers don't let the biological parents speak to the kids. That's crazy. In court. Why is that? That's so stupid. What are you going to do? Stab the kid 50 times? So if I saw them in court, I let them go be with their parents. I'm sitting right there. Nothing's going to happen. And one of the other things I did, every time my kids went to court, not to sound like I walk on water, I had to take them someplace like out to eat so that they can get over the whole court experience. So we would go to lunch or we would go to the Santa Monica Pier. But you know what I would also do if their parent was willing, I'd take them to lunch with us. How cool is that? That just made sense. And now I got happy kids. And it was not that difficult thing to do. There was nothing selfish about me in the sense that these are my kids, because they're not my kids. Even my adopted kids are not my kids. And I get that. They're mine to take care of, but they're not my kids. And I never force anybody to call me dad. I got some kids who call me Price. I got some kids who just call me Hey. I have one of my adopted kids. He's 20, but he always calls me granddaddy. Okay, so any kid that calls me granddaddy, generally, their birth parents were my foster kids, and so that's how they became my grandkids. But you know why he calls me granddaddy? Because he has a dad. He was real clear about that. I'm not going to ever call you dad because I have a dad. Okay, and I met his dad, and we became friends. I have pictures of his dad and I and him having lunch. I don't know why it was so hard for them to reunite him with his dad. That is something that should have happened a long time ago. But I think when we get on the role of separating families, we don't know how to go back.
Yeah. I was also sent a question in my personal chat. Do you have suggestions for adoptees from foster care gaining access to their Social Security files? In your experience, did your kids ever have access to theirs?
One of the things that child welfare people do when it comes to Social Security numbers, they generally do not allow the foster parent to have those numbers. Because there have been bad foster parents who've used those numbers for credit to buy things with. And I hate to say it, but that is the ugly world of child welfare. I have always had all of my kids' Social Security numbers. And I don't know if I get to understand the question quite right, but I've always had my kids' Social Security numbers. And when they became my adopted kids, and this is the problem right here at this point, I did not change their social security numbers. A lot of adopted parents do that. I did not change their social security numbers. And I'm glad I didn't, because if anybody got a record on you, it's going to be Social Security. Okay. And your social security number gets traced and connected to your biological parents. I don't know if people know this, but you get married, your father dies, whatever happens, Social Security has all that information. They may not give it to you, but they have all that information. So I did not change my kids' Social Security numbers. I kept them for the sole purpose of them keeping that connection with their families. So I think, did I answer that?
I think so. Tina, did he answer that?
So sorry, I put in the chat, that was helpful, but I was talking about Social Security, the services file, not the, so I'm sorry, social services file, not Social Security.
Okay.
What do you mean by social services file?
So like if any forms or intake or files that were kept on any of the kids, did they have access to their own file at some point? And do you have any suggestions for adoptees to gain access to their files?
You're not going to like my answer. Well,
Okay.
you'll like my answer, but social services won't like my answer. Okay. So the way this is supposed to work, when you get a file on a child that you become the foster parent of, when that child leaves your house, you're supposed to destroy that file or give it back to social services. Well, social services don't care if you don't give it back, because they're not coming to you to get it back. They're too busy moving that kid to the next place. And they may need to move that kid 3 or 4 more times. So yes, I do keep those files. And yes, I've given them to my kids when they became a certain age, and not necessarily a certain age, when they became stable. Being stable is the important piece, because just because they're 22 or 23, if I give them that file and they're moving from home to home, they're going to lose it. Okay. But by keeping it, I have the information that they need if they should call me, and they generally do. And sometimes that information is something as simple as, what's my mother's maiden name? Because they don't know. They don't know a lot about their family. So they'll call and ask that question, or did I ever live in this particular place? So I will have those files. I hold on to them until they're stable, and I will either mail it to them or they can come get it. Did that answer your question?
I think so. I still am wondering, like for a lot of us, these files are somewhere and they're not accessible. And so I was just wondering if there was any suggestions you had.
Yeah, I have some friends who were adopted who don't know who their birth parents are, and they can't seem to get an answer in California. My adopted kids, for my adopted kids and my foster kids, I have everything on them. So there's nothing they don't know or won't know if they want to know it. So I am the one. Oh, you know what? This is interesting. I am the old guy in the tribe who knows everything. I have all the stories. I can tell them about their parents. I can tell them if their parents were in the military, or if their parents were alcohol or drug addicted, or any of those issues. I have all that information. I have some of the family history in terms of who's autistic, who isn't, because in social services or child welfare, they will make you autistic even if you're not, because it's a moneymaker, right? Just keep in mind, if a child has mental issues or physical problems, it's a moneymaker. They get to get more money from the federal government. Everybody gets paid. In child welfare, everybody gets paid. So a foster kid who's got autism, the state gets paid, the county gets paid, and that foster parent gets more money. Everybody gets paid. So it's crazy that we do that. And it's crazy that we do this. We give those kids multiple diagnoses. And then when they turn 18, somehow all those diagnoses go away. They can't get SSI because Social Security will say, prove it. And then when you try to, I mean, they'll say, prove it, but they won't use the information from social services. They want you to use information from a recent doctor. And if you try to use, but you can get by with some of that old information, but you got to really push it. You got to really push it. School forms, all those kinds of things. So what I would say to anybody who's about to adopt a kid out of foster care, save all those IEPs, save every school record, save every write-up, save all the places that they have lived. There's a wealth of information in all that documentation. Even the father's location, maybe, or the name of the father. There's a lot of information there. So I talked about a lot of things, and I didn't talk about the military as much as I would like to, or education as much as I would like to. I'm a big proponent of charter schools. I'm a huge proponent of homeschooling. A lot of our kids are held back, or they don't do well in school. So I've homeschooled some kids. I put them in charter school. I believe in education by any means necessary. So I do whatever it takes. And back in my day as a foster parent, some of the social workers didn't like homeschooling. I don't know. I guess they figure you're going to they use teachers as part of their eyes and ears. So a homeschool kid is not going to school. So there's not that second set of eyes and ears. So, but in the meantime, you're doing the right thing by making sure that kid gets an education. So I use, actually when homeschooling, I use K-12. That really helps a lot. They're really good. And these days, the military, which is always my suggestion for some of my kinds of kids, the military sort of knows that a lot of foster kids go into the military. You can thank Antoine Fisher for that, and so many other kids who go in there and become disgruntled and become behavior problems. So the military really tries to work with those kids, believe it or not. That is a little secret there. They would do two things. They would help that kid graduate with a diploma, and they will provide therapy for that kid instead of kicking them out. I don't know where that mandate comes from, but it's good to see and it's good to know. I had a kid who was in the military, and I was in San Francisco, and he called me up, and I had just left him at boot camp in Great Lakes, and I'm in San Francisco, and he calls me up, and I'm like, "How are you calling me? Aren't you at boot camp?" And he's like, "No, they said I can make a phone call." Okay, our kinds of kids, when they're in school or anywhere, it's important for people to know that they need to call you when there's a problem, to let them call you when there's a problem, okay? Because at the end of the day, even though they're not whole, you're all they have, you're all they got, you know, and they will call you. I'm really proud of my kids because they tell great stories about the things we did and the time that they had. They had a good life. They really, truly did. All of my kids leave me with a driver's license. 3 or 4 have left with cars. That's unusual. That's really unusual. So it's, you know, I can't even imagine a kid being 17, 18 years old leaving foster care without a driver's license. Okay. And I remember when I first started giving kids driver's license, I got a call from the Public Relations Department of Public Relations Officer of LA County DCFS. He says, "But do they have insurance? That's all I care. Do they have insurance?" I said, "Yes, they do. Yes, they do." Now, did that cost me a lot? Yes. Did they crash a few cars? Yes, they did. Okay. Am I still paying the price that they crashed a few cars? My insurance is high. Okay. My insurance company is not stupid. They know doggone well there's a foster kid at my house who's going to be driving. So, you know, I would buy them these, you know, beat up cars kind of thing. Except for one, I bought him a brand new car. He deserved it. And another one, a used car. Oh, and one of my favorite kids in all the world. I don't want to mention his name, but his social worker was a wonderful guy. And he was also the union rep for social workers, but he was a good social worker. He didn't come and give me grief. He just didn't. So when his kid was emancipating from me, this is a true story. He's writing all this stuff down. He goes, so he's working? I said, yeah, he's got a $40,000 job. What? They're not used to that. And he has a truck. He has a truck? Yep. And he got some dishes and some towels that he took from me. Wow. Oh, and he's taking my dog. And he took the dog too? So that was really funny. I just think that just blew him away. And I'm sure somewhere in LA County, he's telling that story. So I didn't think we could go on for an hour and a half.
Yeah, we probably could, but it is that time. And we really do appreciate having you on. There is one question we could probably squeeze in here that I just received. Did you ever refuse a foster placement?
I did not refuse any foster placement. Most of my foster placement were foster care failures. And the ego part of me thought I was great and wonderful. But I did have 2 kids that I could not keep. One kid who was smart, very smart, honor roll student. He was actually the school nurse. Actually, she probably got fired for this. The school nurse brought him from school to my house. I was a well-known foster parent in the community. It was after school, and she saw all these marks on his back, and he was crying. He didn't want to go home. So she drove him to my house. So social services came and placed him in my house. I really think she got fired for that. I mean, not supposed to transport students. But I had to let him go. As much as I love that kid, and there's some pictures of him on my Facebook. It was his grandparents. Oh, his father was sort of a famous musician, by the way. And you would know it if I told you. But what I did not like was his grandparents were very pushy, and they were constantly calling the county, making demands of me, you know. So I had to let him go, not because of him, but because of them. Okay, he turned out to be a gangbanger, and however angry you might imagine that to be. Okay, rejected by his father, not protected by his mother, and grandparents who were just crazy. Okay, another kid, and I like this guy. I actually like him a lot, and I feel really bad. But he just lies a lot. And he doesn't even know why he lies. I mean, when I saw him as an adult at the gym that I used to go to, he said, forgive me, I was just a kid. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say I was just a kid, but that doesn't work for me. But as a kid, when he was a teenager, he actually had these friends who were all middle-class kids. That was a middle-class community. And he would tell people that I made him dress at the Salvation Army and buy his clothes from the Salvation Army, and that there was no food in my house. And so his friend's mother, who was a nurse, she came to my house, and I don't know what made she think, why she thought she could yell at me. And when she was beginning to yell, he tells me there's no food in this house. My cook showed up at the door. Talk about a perfect situation. I had a cook, and I had so many kids, I had to have a cook like 4 days a week or whatever. And she showed up, and I introduced my cook to this woman, and this woman said, so he says there's no food here. She goes, I come here 4 days a week, I'm cooking something, okay? And so, that was just so perfect. So some kids just, I know I have to use this term, some kids are just messy. I think they lie for attention, or they just lie because maybe that's just their MO. They've gotten used to lie. And telling the truth is just something that's foreign to them. And maybe they just enjoy making up stuff. But he actually ended up graduating from college, by the way. He went to the home of a friend in our community, went to the home of a friend. He crashed their car, but they kept him. And his story, he's all tattooed up, but who is it these days? And it turned out I think his story turned out okay. And he was in a lot of group homes. He was in group homes at age 8 with 16-year-olds. That was horrible.
Well, thank you for that last question and giving us a little extra time here to get that answered. And we just really want to thank you for coming on tonight. I mean, it's been great to hear your story and your work in the adoption community and all your kids, all the kids. And one thing that we like to do here is we want to give you our special signature round of applause. So everybody get
It's round, I see it. I see it.
There's your round of applause from NAAP. We really appreciate
Bruce
you.
from Indianapolis, by the way.
Pardon?
I see Bruce. Is he from Indianapolis?
Bruce was at the mini meetup.
Oh, he sat at my table.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
at your, yeah.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Raynard.
See, there it is.
Yep, great to
Good
hear
see
you too.
Bruce.
Yeah, you too.
Awesome.
So anyway, if someone would like to follow you, where's the best place to follow you at on social media?
You know, I'm really just really silly on social media, so I don't really have a page where I advocate anything anymore. I used to have a YouTube channel, Ask a Foster Parent Anything. That was years ago, and that was basically to help train foster parents.
Okay.
So there's nothing. I'm on Facebook. You're welcome to be a friend of mine on Facebook, but all I do is post gym pictures.
I know. I see your gym pictures all the time. I like them. I really enjoy them.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much. And before we close, Beth, do we have one more slide
We do.
for our next guest?
Yes. Okay, we will have Rich Erlob next week, and we are getting on our first Friday and third Friday schedule the way we want it to be in February. And so next week we will be back with Richard Erlob, legislative update.
Yeah, we want to talk about what went right in 2022 and what went wrong and what's going on in 2023. So if you would like to get more information on legislation, Rich has been a big supporter of NAAP for many, many years. Please join us on February 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And registration is open already, so you may have already gotten something.
Yeah, you can go ahead and register for that. And I think that's all we have, isn't it, tonight? Okay, well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And Raynard, it was so great to see you as always. We'll see you online in the gym.
I'm going to go get bread pudding.
Oh, there you go. And everybody have a great weekend, and we will see you next Friday, okay? February 3rd. See you then. Good night.
Night.